Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. We're here to address the Chromebooks for Education Overview webinar. My name is Kristen Kollick, and I'm on the Chromebooks for Education team as a part of the Google and Education team. Thanks so much for coming. So today, we're going to talk briefly about technology in education and the expectations of today's digital generation. We'll also go into Google and Education and its goals and the idea of learning on the web. We'll then address Chromebooks and the management console and the capabilities that you have there. And finally, at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat bar, and we'll address the questions at the end of the presentation. So to get started, we want to talk a little bit about technology and today's students. Technology is not something that is new to this generation. While it's kind of shocking to think, Google was incorporated back in 1998. So most students today don't even remember a world without Google. So students of today probably have never used the yellow pages to look up a phone number, or whenever they're doing research for an educational project, they probably don't go to an encyclopedia anymore, or the limited number of books in a school library. Students now have access to tools like Wikipedia and Google Scholar. The amount of information that they have has grown exponentially over the last few years and decades. In fact, Encyclopedia Britannica announced this year that it's going to be the last year that they're offering a printed set of their encyclopedia. They're moving entirely over to an online model. So what we have to recognize is that this generation is incredibly familiar with technology. But the truth is that most students' interaction with technology is taking place at home, where they're watching YouTube videos, they're interacting on Facebook, they're Skyping with their relatives. But for the most part, classrooms of today look very much like classrooms of decades past. So why aren't we using technology in the classroom? Google wants to work to change that. So at Google, we believe in the power of the web to help people discover, connect, and learn. The company's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And education really lies at the core of that mission. So the goal of the Google and EDU team is to bring the power of the web to students today, and that goes well beyond Google searching. We believe that with leading edge technologies, will play a vital role in helping equip future generations with the skills that they need to thrive in a workforce of today and tomorrow. So let's take a moment to talk a little bit about this power of the web that I mentioned. Why does Google believe that the web is the best platform for learning? There are 3 reasons for this. Firstly, the web enables people to engage dynamic learning. So that's what this slide addresses, is the ability to engage in dynamic learning. So within that, the first part there is that students, through using the web as a platform, are able to learn across a wide range of modalities. So gone are the days where your only option for learning was to listen to a lecture or to read a book. So with the web, your learners have access to audio tools if they're audio learners. If they're spatial learners, they have access to productivity tools like Blogster that would enable them to create interactive projects. So there's all of these different ways that students can use the web to learn, and it goes beyond just reading and listening to a lecture. Additionally, the web creates a dynamic learning environment by having web resources that span across an unlimited set of topics. So you might recognize that boy in the middle picture there. That's a young Bill Gates. And he has stated that whenever he grew up, the most important thing was his ability to have access to more resources to learn information. Previously, if students were interested in learning more about a topic, they'd go to an encyclopedia and look it up, or they'd go to the library and check out books. But by the time they got to the end of that book or to the end of the encyclopedia entry, that was the extent of what they could learn. But now with the web, students have the world at their fingertips. They're able to find blogs and news articles and a lot of rich sources to continue to explore their interests and passions beyond the resources that are immediately available to them in the library. Additionally, by using the web, These resources are available anytime, anywhere, and this reflects how students are these days. Students might be on a Chromebook during the day at class, then they go to a soccer practice and they're on their smartphone, and then they go home at night and they're on their family's PC. When you're using the web for these learning resources, they're available all during the day across all different devices. So additionally, we want to look at the second reason why Google believes that the web is the best platform for learning, and that's because the web allows stakeholders to collaborate on learning. Whenever you're using the web as a platform, you allow your parents and teachers and students to access content regardless of where they're finding that information from, if they're on their home PC, on that iPhone, or on a computer in the classroom. So with this immediate access, families are more able to participate in learning. For instance, a teacher would be able to share a Google document with a parent so that the parent could be at work and see what their student is doing during the day. Or a teacher could have more visibility into how students' homework is going in the evening. One of our Chromebook districts, Fort Sam Houston in Texas, serves a student population where a lot of the parents are in the military. And they chose Google Apps for Education and Chromebooks because it allowed students to connect with their parents even whenever they were overseas. So additionally, whenever you're using the web as a platform, you're able to connect with leaders outside of schools. So for instance, through Hangouts on Air or YouTube, students are able to watch the presidential debates live or listen to the Dalai Lama speak all online. We have another school in Pennsylvania, Sarah Catholic School, that is using Chromebooks, and one of their big goals was to make sure that students had access to classroom materials during snow days. So it's something that works really well for a Sarah Catholic school, but might be that student's worst nightmare, that even in a snow day, they still have to go to class, if just remotely. So finally, with this, whenever stakeholders are allowed to collaborate, what it does is it shifts to a more dynamic learning environment where it moves away from the teacher as a lecturer and starts to involve students more. Students are able to collaborate on presentations and documents and work together to learn rather than just taking notes. So it starts to create an environment where a student acts as a facilitator for that learning. So thirdly, the reason why we believe that the web is the best platform for learning is that we really think that the web helps students prepare for their careers. The truth is that we don't know what the workplace is going to look like in 5 or 10 years, but what we do know is that companies that are using web technologies are growing. A McKinsey report came out a few months ago that showed that networked businesses, so businesses that have a web presence and that are using online technologies, are more likely to be market leaders and to have higher margins. Additionally, working with technology is becoming the norm in today's world. At Google, I work with technology all the time, but this isn't something that's limited to large tech companies. It's shown that 80% of businesses right now are using web technology to provide services and to attract new customers. And I would imagine that that 80% is just going to grow in the years to come. And finally, web technology is driving innovation. Literally, this last picture here on this slide is one of Google's self-driving cars, which is one of the examples of how Google is constantly innovating in the world of technology. Just a few weeks ago, Governor Brown, the governor of California, signed a bill that allowed for the driving and testing of self-driving cars on the streets of California. 5 or 10 years ago, who would have thought? But this just shows that we need to prepare our students now for the workplace that they'll enter in the future. So where does Google come in? The Google and EDU team works with students to help them, firstly, adopt technologies that will meet their needs. Secondly, to leverage web resources. And thirdly, to connect with educators around the world. Since this is the Chromebooks overview presentation, we're going to spend the bulk of our time focusing on this first point. So in regards to technologies that meet your needs, firstly, Google offers you a platform, a learning platform through Google Apps. Google Apps for Education provides you with very powerful and intuitive web-based collaboration and communication tools that help you to teach and learn better together from anywhere. Additionally, Google Apps for Education is a platform-agnostic product, so students can work across all different devices, from their Chromebook to their Android tablet to a Windows machine or an iPad at home. Additionally, Google is working to provide you with strong web-based educational content through things like YouTube for EDU or the Chrome Web Store. The Chrome Web Store we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation, but that's the place that provides you with tons of free and affordable web applications for education. And finally, Google is offering devices that allow you to pull together that platform and that online content to create a really transformative curriculum for your students. So we'll go a little more in depth into Chromebooks now, because we believe that with Google Chromebooks, we're helping you to unlock the world of the web for your students. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to watch a short YouTube video that kind of provides an overview to the idea behind the Chrome operating system, which is the basis for Chromebooks.
So, you are on the internet using a web browser. You know, that thing with the address bar and back button and bookmarks. That thing you're in right now, up there. Yeah, that's your web browser. If you're like me, when you're on your computer, you spend something like, 90% of your time on the internet in a browser. There's emails, chatting, you're reading news, watching videos, playing games, you're buying things, just to name a few, which kind of makes the web browser the most important program on your computer. And if you think about it, it hasn't always been this way. You see, web browsers were first designed a long time ago with the old internet in mind. You know, back when it was slow and mainly just words with links that just send you to more words with links, back before all of these innovations. So some guys at Google asked, what if we redesigned the web browser from scratch with an eye towards the new web? You know, maps, video, and web apps that are a lot more dynamic. And so they created Chrome, a web browser that's crazy fast on today's internet. And it's sleek and more secure, but mostly it's really fast. I mean, my biggest question when I boot up my computer is how long till I get on the internet, right? I mean, if there isn't any internet, I might not even use my computer. Did you know that even the fastest computers will still take like 45 seconds to boot up? 45 seconds! You can make a sandwich in that time. So here's what's going on when your computer's booting up. There's this list of things to do, stuff I'm sure you don't care about, but it cranks through them one at a time. What you probably notice is that your programs begin loading up slowly, and if you're like me, as soon as you see your web browser icon appear, you're like double-clicking it over and over and over. Let's go, buddy, I got some emails to read. Well, all of this stuff is called your operating system. And over time, it gets rusty, and your once fresh computer gets slow. Well, Google was like, wait a second, if your operating system's a hassle and all you're really using it for is to get on your web browser, to get online, then maybe we don't need this anymore. What if when you pressed on, you were on the internet in seconds? What if your browser was your operating system? And so check this out. This means that you don't have to deal with managing programs or nagging updates or lost files or confusing settings or blue screens of doom, and there's no nagging updates, just your browser. Which means you can still listen to music, you can watch movies, interact with friends, you're creating documents, you're playing games, you're writing your emails, you're doing all of this stuff that you were already doing on the internet. But here's the thing, none of this is stored on your computer. What? None of it, you ask? Yeah, none of it. Really? Nothing? Yeah, nothing is stored on your computer. Well, where is it? It's on the internet. You know, like when you access your emails from your computer and your phone. The email, it isn't stored on either device. So if everything's stored on the internet, then your phone, your computer, all of these devices are what people call stateless, which is kind of a big word, so maybe just remember this. Chrome is a totally rethought web browser. You can download it right now on your computer. But Chrome OS is a totally rethought computer that lets you stop worrying about your computer so you can focus on the internet, which is what most of us use our computers for nowadays anyways.
So that video is a fun way to address why the Chrome operating system was developed, but let's look at how it's actually being applied in an educational setting. So Chromebooks are web-based computers that are really great for schools because they're easy to use, they're easy to manage, they're easy to customize, and they're easy to scale. So we've designed Chromebooks in education to be practically invisible within the classroom because we believe that technology should be just a tool that helps you to teach. But nobody's going to use that tool if it becomes too difficult or too time-consuming. So with Chromebooks, students open up the lid, they sign in, and then are up and running in the classroom in under 8 seconds. 8 seconds. And then even beyond that, once they're signed in, the devices are incredibly simple to use for both students and faculty. Chromebook adopters say that they love the devices because when they're used in the classroom, they, quote, just work. So first, let's cover a few of the benefits from the user perspective, so the things that you can see. And we already addressed the fact that the Chromebook boots up in 8 seconds or less. And this is a very critical fact because whenever you're looking at other devices that require 3 to 10 minutes to boot up, it's oftentimes the difference between using technology and not using technology, because if you have a class period of 50 minutes, even 3 of those wasted on just making sure students are up and running is too many. Additionally, with Chromebooks, everything that you're using is stored in the web, so it doesn't matter which machine you're using. So with Chromebooks, the focus isn't on the technology, but it's on the user. So when your students sign into any Chromebook, they're taking to the learning experience that you've designed for them based on your curriculum goals. So the idea is for that technology to seem invisible in the classroom, to be just another tool in the class, like the desk, the whiteboard, the content that you're using. So related to that, Chromebooks are easily shareable. They can be shared by many different students. If you have a traditional laptop and you hand somebody your laptop to borrow, there's always a little bit of fear about what they're going to open up, whether they'll change your settings, whether or not all of your stuff is going to be okay on that laptop. But with Chromebooks, since nothing's actually stored on the device, you just log off, let somebody else log in, and then they're taken to their stuff. So the shareability of Chromebooks is something that's particularly important if you guys are looking to use devices in either a shared lab or a mobile lab setting, or if you're starting, to ramp up to a one-to-one by initially going with a one-to-many program. So the other area that we want to address is one of the critical differences between Chromebooks and every other device out on the market, and that is that they're incredibly easy to manage. So if you're in the tech department or if you talk to your tech team, you'll know that managing devices takes up a significant portion of their time. Buying licenses, installing software locally, setting up antivirus controls, continually checking to make sure that they're running and updating, wiping devices, re-imaging devices periodically. All of these things become incredibly time-consuming and very cost-intensive. Since the Chromebooks are entirely web-based, it makes management of all of your Chromebooks a breeze. Chromebooks help you to shift away from the model of the old way of managing where you have to go device by device. With Chromebooks, you manage everything from one centralized web page called the Management Console. So through the Management Console, you're able to control device settings and set security controls on all of your computers. And we'll take a moment here in a few minutes to hop into the Management Console so that I can show you some of the features there. But additionally, from an IT perspective, Chromebooks are about as secure as you can make any machine. They provide multiple levels of security, including sandboxing and data encryption and verified boot. Also with a Chromebook, you don't even have to worry about malware or viruses. Since there is no hard drive, there's nothing to attack. Additionally, one of the most beneficial elements of Chromebooks is that they're forever fresh. So Google releases a new version of the Chrome operating system about every 7 weeks. So your Chromebooks are always running on the best and most recent version of that operating system. So this helps improve your user's experience, but it also means that whenever we develop new tools and features to the Management Console, you as an administrator will have immediate access to all of those new features as well. Finally, another great thing that you're able to do through the Management Console is to create a customized learning environment for your students by controlling their user experience. So through the Management Console, you're able to put your students into different groups and then whitelist and blacklist websites. Or you can have web pages auto-load whenever they sign into a device. Or you can find applications that you want them to use in the classroom and have those applications automatically available to them whenever they sign into a device. So all of these things enable you to create a customized learning environment for your student that's designed around your curriculum, and also makes that process after they've opened the lid all the more seamless whenever they're using them in the classroom. So now we're going to take just a couple of seconds to jump into the management console so that you can see a little more about what I'm referring to. So if you guys are Google Apps for Education users, this page here should be pretty familiar. It's the control panel for your Google Apps for Education domain. And whenever you buy Chromebooks for Education, if you go over here to the Settings tab, you'll have a new tab here available for Chrome OS. And this is where you actually manage all of your Chromebooks, whether you have 10 or 10,000 in your district. All of your management takes place through this one centralized console. So we're not going to go into too much depth about what you're able to do here. There's a lot of resources online where you can learn about all of the different functionality, but from a high level, here you can see the org settings, and so this is where you're controlling all of the privacy and security controls for the devices that you have. So for instance, here if you have a proxy server set up, you can require all of your users to sign in through that proxy so that those filters still take an effect. And if we go further down here in the list, sorry about that, then we can see some of the other capabilities that are available through the org settings tab. Additionally, one of the things that we're also able to do through the device settings is to control things like who can sign into a device and enable auto updates. So with these device settings, what you're doing is controlling the features that are available on all of your Chromebooks. So there's a lot of different security features here. So let's jump back into that org settings and see if I can't get this to scroll. So again, with the org settings, what you're doing is controlling your user policies. All right, now we're getting the scroll working there. But you can see that up at the top, you're able to put your students into user groups. So for instance, if you wanted to have a third grade group, a fourth grade group, and break them up by student grade levels, or faculty versus students, all of these organizational settings will apply for whatever group the user's in. So you can create a very different experience for your different groups of students. And all of these security controls are available here through the management console. And here you can see this is where you're whitelisting and blacklisting websites, and other things like controlling content for your users based on which group they're in. The last thing I want to touch on here in the management console is this applications tab. So this is where you're able to push different applications out to your users. So you can do that on a group level as well. But what you're able to do is to look into the Chrome Web Store and find applications that you want your students to use in the classroom, and have those automatically available to them whenever they sign in. So here, if we go to Managed Pre-Install Apps, we can search in the Chrome Web Store and say that we have a French class that wants to use a certain application. If we search for French in the Chrome Web Store, it's going to pull up all of the different applications that are available in the category of French. And through just clicking this Add button, we would be able to automatically add that application to all of the students that were in that group that we specified. So it's as easy as those few clicks, and then all of your students have access to the application, as opposed to that old model of having to go to every single device and installing an application for those students to use. So that's just a quick dive into the management console, and we'll hop back into the presentation for now. So one thing that we're particularly excited about is to discuss the different devices that you have available to use in the school. As of late October, we announced a new device, the Samsung Chromebook, and we're especially excited about this device because it allows us to give you an even more affordable way to use the Chrome operating system in the classroom. So this Samsung Chromebook, this new device, comes with the same easy-on 8-second boot up as our other devices and has a battery life minimum of at least 6.5 hours, so it's really great in a classroom setting. Additionally, it's our sleekest Chromebook yet. It weighs in at just at 2.5 pounds, and it's less than an inch thick. But the greatest thing, in my opinion, about the Samsung Chromebook is the price point. This new device is $279 for the Chromebook for Education bundle. So what that gets you is the hardware as well as a license to the management console software. So this is something that is an incredibly affordable option for getting Chrome OS into your schools. So with the announcement of the new Samsung Chromebook, there are now 3 different laptop options that you have for the Chrome operating system. There's the Samsung Series 5, which is a device that we've had out on the market for about a year and a half now. The Samsung Series 5 550, which is a few months old, and then this Samsung Chromebook, which is the newest announcement. So there are a lot of differences in the technical specifications, but I wanted to highlight some of the key differentiators. With the Samsung Series 5 Chromebook, it's still very popular in a classroom setting because it has a battery life that lasts about 8.5 to 10 hours. So the Samsung Series 5 has the longest battery life of any of the Chromebooks that we have, and it costs $429 for that educational bundle of the hardware as well as the management console. The Samsung Series 5 550 is running on an Intel Celeron processor, so it is still our fastest and most powerful Chromebook on the market. Its battery life is about 6 hours, and the price point on this one is $479 for the hardware and the management console. And then lastly, as we just discussed, there's the Samsung Chromebook, and it's running on an ARM processor, which is the same processor that is used in tablets and cell phones. So it's a very fast device, and the battery life is estimated at over 6.5 hours for these devices. And again, it costs $279 for the Chromebook as well as the management console software. Finally, just briefly, I wanted to address the Chrome box, which is another option that you have for getting Chrome operating system into your school. It's a box that you connect monitors and keyboards and mice into to create a desktop environment that would be running on the Chrome operating system. So this is a great device to be used in libraries or at a faculty room or an administrator's desk, because what it's enabling you to do is to create a desktop environment that still has all of those management controls that you have on Chromebooks as well. So the idea behind Chromebooks is that we want to take the classroom from this previous picture that could have been from the 1950s or could very well be from today and move it into a model where we see more technology being integrated into students' hands. So I want to talk a little bit about one school that's doing just that. Fond du Lac is a school district in Wisconsin that recognized the importance of technology in education and decided that they wanted to do a one-to-one initiative for their 2,400 students. So to make sure that they had a successful one-to-one initiative, they set up a technology integration committee to look at different devices and decide which one was best for their setting. So they evaluated different devices, including iPads and Chromebooks, and actually put 200 different Chromebooks into one of their high schools, and ultimately decided to go with Chromebooks because what they found was that these devices were not only incredibly easy to manage, but also were great for creating content. So with the full-size keyboard and with the access to Google Apps for Education and all of the other web-based resources, they called the Chromebooks their creation stations because it was a great way for their students to not only consume content in the classroom, but also to create. So let's get back briefly to the things that the Google and Education team wants to be able to help you with. We've just addressed the technology aspect, but what about leveraging web resources and connecting with other educators? So as far as leveraging web resources, one thing I wanted to highlight is the ecosystem of web-based resources that you have available through the Chrome Web Store. So I definitely encourage you to go into the Chrome Web Store and click on the Educational tab to see all of the thousands of applications that are available there. There are apps for all different subject matters and grade levels, and those can be used on the Chrome browser and the Chrome operating system. And one thing that we're particularly excited about is the announcement of app packs. So what we realized is that there are so many applications and that it might be nice to have somebody curate those for you. So we worked with early adopters of Chromebooks and also with some of the application developers to put together bundles of applications that we think fit a student's needs. So there's actually 3 different bundles. There's an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school bundle. So these app packs are about 20 different applications that we think are particularly effective at a curriculum for those grade levels. And through the management console for your Chromebooks, you're able to bulk push these application packs. The majority of these applications are free, but there are some that are either freemium or paid applications as well. And when you bulk install them through the Chromebooks management console, you actually get a 40% discount on that installation. Not to mention just the ease of installing 20 different applications with just a few mouse clicks is pretty great as well. So finally, let's address the idea of sharing and connecting with educators. There are a lot of different resources that you have that Google puts together to allow you to connect with educators around the world. I definitely recommend going to the Google Apps for Education Training Center. And additionally, through the Google Education page, we have all kinds of resources for you, including information about summits that we're hosting and a different calendar of events. One thing that we're really excited about is our recently launched Google and Education Hangouts on Air series. It's been going for a couple of weeks now, but we have over 100 different Hangouts planned that feature Googlers as well as educators and administrators from around the country speaking on all different kinds of topics, from Google Apps for Education to Chromebooks to digital citizenship to using web resources. There's so many different talks there. They're all free, so you can sign up for those on the Hangouts on Air webpage that's listed there. Additionally, those will all be recorded and available on demand if you don't have a chance to attend those live. So here's just a little bit more information about those Hangouts on Air and the where they'll be stored whenever they're recorded. And I'll leave that page up for a little bit, but we'll go ahead and hop into Q&A now. So as a refresher, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to chat those into the chat bar, and we'll address those each at this point. So we have a question from Mike, who says that he's been reading online that it sounds like there's the ability to work offline on documents and emails. So that's a really good question. As a web-based device, what are the capabilities of Chromebooks in an online setting? So they're obviously much more powerful whenever they're connected to the web, but that doesn't mean that you're not able to use them when they're offline. Particularly in the Google Apps for Education suite, Mike is correct that both Docs and Gmail are available offline for both reading, writing, and editing. So you can use Docs and Gmail whenever you're offline, make changes, add content, and then whenever you have an internet connection, again, those are uploaded back into the cloud. Additionally, if you go into the Chrome Web Store that we were talking a little bit about earlier and search for offline, you'll see all of those third-party applications that have offline capabilities as well. So we have a question from Patty about whether or not students are able to access local storage from servers. So there are a lot of different things that you can do through tools like Ericom or Chrome RDP to access applications and resources that are stored elsewhere. Those do require a bit more technical overhead. So the ultimate goal with Chromebooks is that you'll be using the web as your platform. So through that, you'll have access to Google applications and your Drive storage there. So as you start to have students rely more heavily on storing docs in the cloud, then hopefully you'll migrate away from the need to access local servers. So we have a question from Garrett, who's asking about using a domain name on Google Apps for Education. And one thing about Google Apps for Education is that it is powered by Gmail, but when you sign up for Google Apps for Education, you're signing up using your own domain name. So it's something you have to own that domain name and verify ownership, but you're able to use whichever domain you'd like. So your students will be myname@yourdomainname.edu. So you're not having a gmail.com username. It's a domain name that you've selected. John has a question about logging students' web activities. That is not something that comes standard with the Chromebooks Management Console to have an exact track of what students are doing or logging their web activity, but there are different applications that you can install from the Chrome Web Store that allows your teachers and administrators more visibility into what students are doing on the Chromebook, but it's not something that's standard within the control panel. So Gary has a question about using digital textbooks on the Chromebooks, and that's a great question. The Chromebooks are able to run web-based applications, and we're also working with textbook manufacturers to have online resources available that can be used in the Chrome Web Store. At this point, there are a lot of different textbook manufacturers and resellers, so I'd recommend looking specifically to see whether Chrome applications are developed for those. But if it's a web-based resource, then yes, that will work on the Chromebook. We also have a team here that is entirely dedicated to working with textbook publishers and application developers to make sure that tools that are developed in the future are completely compatible with the Chromebooks. So I would say that yes, textbooks are able to be used on the Chromebooks, but if you have any specific concerns, to talk to that manufacturer to see whether or not the Chrome operating system is one of their supported OSs. So there's another question from Gary regarding the use of iTunes. iTunes is proprietary Apple software, so that is not something that can be used on the Chrome operating system. But I would definitely encourage you to look at the Chrome Web Store. It's not a one-to-one comparison, but the Chrome Web Store is the ecosystem of Chrome-based applications. So in addition to all of the web-based resources that you can use, the Chrome Web Store has the applications that are available for the Chromebook. It's kind of a different model from the Apple idea of buying an application and installing it on a device. What you're doing with the Chromebook is allowing your student access to that application on the web. So it's a move away from the idea of something like an iTunes library, which is not available on the Chromebook. And John has a question about state assessments that require a third-party application. So as of a couple of months ago, the Smarter Balance Consortium as well as PARC announced that the Chrome operating system is one of their supported operating systems for that standardized testing. Beyond that, on a state-by-state testing level, I can't speak to whether or not the Chromebooks are a supported application, but that would be something to look into on an individual level. So it looks like a lot of the questions are slowing down in the chat. If you have any more, feel free to chat those in. I'll stick around for a few more minutes and to address them. But thank you very much for coming today. Again, I'd highly encourage you to check out the Education on Air Hangout site. It'll have a lot of interesting webinars coming up in the next few weeks. If you were sent here by one of your Google representatives, feel free to reach out to them with any questions or to give them an update about your interest in Chromebooks. If you haven't spoken with anybody at Google yet, I recommend going to our website. Whenever you go to the Chromebooks for Education website, there's a link there that allows you to contact sales. If you complete that short form, somebody will reach out to you in the next day or two to have a phone conversation to answer any questions that you might have and help get you set up with your next steps. So thanks again for coming, and I'll be here for a few more questions, but we appreciate your time today. Mark has one more question that just came up in the chat bar, and that was regarding the costs for management. In the presentation, I talked about the bundled pricing that actually breaks down into $30 for the Management Console license, and that is a one-time fee. There aren't any ongoing costs for using the Management Console on a Chromebook. All right, we're going to go ahead and sign off now. Thank you guys so much for coming, and have a great day.